Hello and welcome to this video. If you are new to modular synthesis or you are thinking about getting your own modular synthesizer and you're wondering what all the fuss is about and what exactly a modular synthesizer is for, then this is the video for you. Some of these ideas are based on my the last few years, my own experience of using a modular synthesizer and what I've learned over that period of time. I guess on my sort of creative journey, which is far from over, I should say. I'm still learning. I like to think, we're all still learning. And yeah, so some of these ideas are just some thoughts that I've had recently. The topic of this video, I suppose, what is a modular synthesizer for? Why would anybody want to use one? It's a bit of a difficult thing to get to grips with, and there are much easier ways of making music with a computer and so on. But recently I was having a conversation with a colleague at work, and he knows a little bit about modular synthesis, and but I don't think he's ever really had any hands-on experience, and was sort of asking me different questions and was quite surprised when I said that I didn't use a keyboard, like a traditional kind of piano keyboard, and he was sort of quite surprised by that. And this led to a sort of conversation about what modular synthesis is for, what it does well, and maybe what it doesn't do well, or not what it doesn't do well, but what other methods do more easily or better. So in many ways, I suppose, there's probably two approaches, I would say, to using a modular synthesizer. One is that you do everything within the synthesizer, within the rack, and you just have a stereo feed that comes out, and you record that result, and it's a performance more than anything. You record that performance, and that is the piece of music. Another way would be to record individual parts into a DAW, in the same way that you might record guitar parts or bass guitar parts or vocal parts or whatever, and then build a song or an arrangement within the computer. Okay, so those are the two ways that I'm thinking of you can break down the use of a modular. One is probably very specific to the strengths of what a modular does, and is a very much a DAWless approach. And the other is probably more akin to how you would use any other instrument that you would record, and is mainly, I guess, a DAWful. That sounds like I'm saying awful. I don't mean awful. I mean DAWful. Anyway, never mind. But it's more about the DAW than it is the modular. You're just really using the modular to create sounds. I'm not saying that either way is better, and that I would never really ever want to tell anybody you should do something this way or you shouldn't do it that way, because we should all do whatever we want the way that we want to do it. And I have used both these ways of working in the past, dependent on what I wanted to do and what the project was, or what the outcome was that I was trying to achieve. So those are the two ways that I'm sort of thinking. Everything contained within the modular, or just using the modular to create parts which you then record into a DAW and then manipulate and all the rest of it. I hang about. I've lost my train of thought already. Believe it or not, I do think about these videos before I start recording, and I do have some notes written over there, but sometimes I just go off track and I waffle on a little bit and I lose my place, and then I have to come back and think about what what I'm doing, and that is exactly what's happened. So let's step back a bit. So those two approaches, the DAWless and the DAWful, which I'm regretting that now because it sounds like I'm saying awful, and I'm not. Even having said that, from the very beginning, when I started using my modular, I wanted to use it in a DAWless way. So whenever I have used it the other way, where I just record parts and sort of arrange those within a DAW, that's only ever been sort of for very specific one-off things, like where I might have had a commission to produce some music for a film, a short film, or a soundtrack for something, or something like that. And it's very specific. It's got to be a certain way, and I will just use the modular as a tool like any other desktop synthesizer or instrument and record those parts. And it is a really useful way to work. However, if I'm recording my own music, I won't work that way. I will work completely DAWlessly, doing everything within the modular, and then just recording the output of that. However, having said that approach being my main approach, that has changed over time. So I would say that in the very beginning, when I started with modular, I was very much thinking in the mindset of chord progressions and trying to play chords, because I was coming from the background of playing guitar and playing in bands and writing songs. And so a lot of what I would do, and that's, one of the first things I bought a few modules that I could just get going, and then you can't see, but it's down here off the screen, is a KeyStep Pro, which I would use that with the keyboard to play in parts and record those as sequences, or to try and play chord progressions, albeit arpeggiated chord progressions, and sort of, to sort of try and I guess I was thinking of it in a way that you would approach sort of, I don't know, more, for want of a better word, normal composition or normal songwriting, which worked perfectly well, and is a great way of using the modular. And in that sense, I would come up with parts on my guitar. So I might come up with a bass line on the guitar, and then work that out on the keyboard and record it into the sequencer. Or I might come up with a little riff a little repeating riff that I could program in, a chord progression that I'd then arpeggiate and program that in, and have all those parts, build up. So you have one part come in, then another part comes in, another part comes in, and so on, and you build the piece up that way. And more, as I say, more akin to something which is based on diatonic harmony and melodies, and is very similar to how you probably would approach making music in a DAW or with any other kind of instrument like a piano or a guitar or whatever. Slowly, I think over time, and as my knowledge of the modular has grown and my confidence with it has grown, I think I've kind of veered away from that approach, where I don't actually use this KeyStep very much anymore, and instead I'm using the modules and the sort of the random sequencers and generators that are in the modular to create patterns, and then from there I guess I'm exploring sound a lot more than I am exploring harmonies and melodies and all the rest of it. And when I think about it, I kind of think that is really what a modular is for, because that is something that you can do with a modular that is very difficult to do with other types of instruments. Whereas the other approach, you can do that with other instruments, and and it's perfectly okay. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that with a modular, by all means, but it's a very different way of working. It's again, as I've mentioned in other videos, it's a more exploratory, experimental path, and what you end up creating is music that I guess is more akin to kind of soundscapes, timbral explorations, for want of a better word, where you're more interested in the way that the music builds and the changes in the sound and so on, than you are in the actual melodic or harmonic structure of the piece of music. So that's kind of what I'm thinking in terms of how Modular works. Now, I don't know, does that make sense to anyone? Am I sort of just waffling on nonsensically here? Am I explaining myself well? I'm not sure whether I am, to be honest, but I'm sure some people will let me know either positively or negatively in the comments. So how are you using the Modular? Are you using it that way, or are you using it as, you know, just as a tool for creating parts the same way as any other desktop instrument? What's your method? I'm kind of sort of, you know, I'm starting to feel now that a Modular is kind of like the ultimate DAWless setup that, you know, it's all in one box. Well, I suppose it depends how big it is and how many modules you've got, but for me anyway, it's all in one box, that I can take it somewhere, I can do a live performance that's DAWless, I can record a part that's DAWless, and it just sort of works really, really well that way. It, you know, and in many ways, you know, I kind of think of it sort of, it's like this multi-timbral orchestra of which I am the conductor. So, you know, having lots of different voices that have patched together and then sort of weaving those in and out of each other, creating this soundscape. That's kind of, I guess, where my interest is these days, more so than trying to sort of create structured chord patterns that you might even, you know, like think of as like verses and choruses or whatnot. So sort of a more experimental approach. And as I say, yeah, I'm relying less and less on this keyboard, and more on sequences that are within the Modular itself. The majority of the time I use Mutable Instruments marbles, or a clone of marbles, which I just, you know, I can kind of get lost in that, and I just love the way that works. You know, being able to sort of generate random sequences, but then also lock a sequence, and lock the sort of the rhythmic side of it or the melodic side of it separately. Yeah, so that, you know, it's one of my favourite methods there. So hopefully that makes a little bit of sense to you. I'm not sure how long I've been going on for at the moment, because I had to start this video about 5 times because I just couldn't get going. So I don't know, maybe about 10 minutes. Let me know what you think about that in the comments below, and yeah, I'll see you next time. Cheerio.